A common axiom is that those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Another axiom is that we sweat in peace so that we don't bleed in war. Here at the Marine Corps Association, we fully understand both. That is why we offer through our professional development page on our website a comprehensive catalog of battle studies, tactical and ethical decision games, and war games to ensure that not only do we learn from the past, but we embrace the thoughts and decisions that influence the outcomes of some of the greatest actions of the Marine Corps. We have tools and techniques that will enhance both unit training as well as enable comprehensive self study. Check out all that the Marine Corps Association has to offer on our website. Go to mca-marines.org/professional development. That's mca-marines.org/professional development and get your reps and sets in.
Hey, Scuttlebutt listeners, thank you for joining us. I am Vic. I'm here with Nancy,
Hi, everyone.
and we're really stoked to be welcoming Cheryl Cross to the show. Cheryl, thank you so much for joining us.
Super honored to be here. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the next few minutes that we have a chance to talk. Thanks.
Yeah, me too. So, some insider baseball here. So Cheryl actually interviewed me for her podcast, which is and correct me if I get this wrong, but it is the Military to Civilian Career Transition Power Hour.
That's it. The longest name in the history of podcast recording. I got to figure out how to say it shorter, but right now that's what it is.
Yeah,
You
well,
nailed it.
being that you work with so many veterans, we got to come up with an acronym.
An acronym is
I'm
definitely the
thinking
way to go.
M2CTPH or something like that.
I
I,
think you
I'll
need
work on
a
that.
phonetic alphabet letter in there as well. I think that would really, really
Yeah.
seal the deal.
Well, to actually be an accurate acronym within the DoD, it would have to be something that would change or be reappropriated within like 90 days. So,
I'm going to work on that. Okay, let
yeah,
me come up with my list.
yeah,
I
we'll
did make a
brainstorm. Yeah.
I have a hashtag that I'm trying to make popular, and it's working so far on LinkedIn, and that's hashtag MIL, the letter two, CIV, Mil two
Oh,
Civ. So, and I have people come up to me and say, "Oh, you have that Mil two Civ," and I'm like, "Oh, it's working, it's
yeah,
working." So,
yeah.
yeah, I'm a
I
little
like it. All right,
influencer.
we're definitely gonna put that in the show notes for sure. Hashtag mill to sieve. So as amazing as everything that you're doing, Cheryl, which I want to definitely dive into your background because from what I understand in my you sort of, you know, junior varsity cyber stalking that I did of you, um, you're what I see as your beginnings would definitely not like if we were to read the chicken bones, I would not have guessed that you would be like where you are now. And so I want to like really unpack your journey. But just as we're talking, so like you as we mentioned, you've got your podcast, you've got a an entire mill to sieve sort of campaign going on. Um, what you're doing for veterans is so great. But how did you get here? So you're a broadcast journalist, right? By trade is sort of where your entryway into this. You also did HR for Fortune 500 companies, so you got to see like the hiring process and all of its glory, or for all of its infamy. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, so tell us about like where are you from, and you're living
sure.
in Hawaii now. I mean, this is
Yeah.
all so great.
Thank you. I've had the most interesting life, and I'm honored to be able to share it. I am from, and they joke here in Hawaii, I am from the ninth island. I was born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada, which everyone here I think there's more Hawaiians or folks from Hawaii in Las Vegas than there actually are here. And I know the UNLV has a lot of students that come from our private and public schools. So Las Vegas is my grounding point. My father served during the Korean War. And although the armistice was signed during his basic, what is it called? Basic training, boot camp. He still served his compulsory 2 years, and that changed his life. It gave him a bigger aperture. He came back from that, going into business school, not joining the family business, which was oil drilling, and moving to Las Vegas because he never wanted to see snow ever again.
Yeah.
I can
Ever.
appreciate that.
Yeah, having
Yes.
been in Korea myself, I get it, yeah.
Yeah, so he had an opportunity to take a shot. He worked through his veteran network, got a job at a casino as a shill. If you know what a shill is,
I
they
don't.
are
What is that? Yeah.
play actors. So they are actors that work for the casino. They used to call them contractors. So these contractors would be given house money. They could drink as much as they wanted to.
I like
And the
it.
only two rules were that they had to act like they had a good time and they couldn't date the waitresses and you couldn't take the house money home. So kind of like a cashier, you got a bankroll when you started your shift and your job was to lose it but act like you were having a great time. And in old
Wow.
time Las Vegas down on Fremont Street, everything was open. So, people were walking by on the sidewalks and they'd hear the excitement. Well, my dad is a really quiet guy, good looking son of a gun, man. He was a good looking guy in his 20s. But, I can see why he tired of it because that's just not his thing. And he ended up being in the casino industry for 65 years. But
Wow.
Vegas is where I started. I fell in love with radio and got a chance to become a broadcaster. And even though you've given me such kudos, I never did journalism. I am doing more journalism now in interviewing people, but I was a music director and a broadcaster. That led me into the music industry with David Geffen. I worked at Geffen Records for a year or
Yeah.
so. They sold their division. I moved to a smaller company. I continued my mission. I met incredible people. Miles Davis is someone I met through Max Roach, who was our
Oh,
client.
wow.
I could tell you, we could talk about that forever. Al Di Meola, who's still touring. There's so many wonderful artists. It gave me a chance to really get into promotion, media, marketing, and that's really where I launched. With new tech and emerging new tech, I jumped into the internet. It was growing, it was evolving. I became a competitive business analyst, and I had a chance through family connections to work in the financial services. That's what led me to recruiting. Someone called and said, "Hey, we really want our recruiters to learn how to source, and I hear that's what you do. You know how to go find people and things." So I taught them how to do it. When I saw how much the recruiters were making, Vic and Nancy, I said, "Pff, screw research. I'm going to go. And, my family dynamic had changed. I was the primary breadwinner for my family. I lived in Hermosa Beach, California. I
I
want
love Hermosa.
Yeah, I needed to raise a son, and I wanted to keep him in those good schools and, have good food to
Sure.
eat and have some
Yeah.
fun on the weekends. So I became a recruiter, and my life just sort of normed towards that. Recruiting gave me an opportunity to do everything that I'd learned and loved. I got to interview people, I got to make connections, I got to get people jobs and really change their lives. So that was sort of the heartbeat of what I did. I didn't always do recruiting. I branched off and did marketing and things like that. What landed me in Hawaii was aligning with the DoD contracting company. They hired me for my marketing skills and recruiting knowledge. This project we worked on went live and it went firm wide. And I didn't want to leave. I love these folks. So I'm like, "Do you have anything else you want me to work on?" And they said, "Actually, we hear you're going to Hawaii on visits." And I said, "Yes, I am. Once every other month or so. We have a position open. Would you be willing to talk to them?" And so the love affair became a love
Oh,
affair, and
wow.
they hired me full
Nice.
time, and so I had a chance to really focus on that. The goal of this, and is what leads me to why I know so much about your audience, is working for a DoD contracting company with 33% hires coming straight from the military. I got to interview hundreds, if not thousands, of people who were either pre-gaming or in the soup of their transition. And honestly, Nancy, I know you know this as a mill spouse. Vic, you went through this yourself. Um, Transition is not easy. And I was a company ambassador. There was only one thing I could help them with, and that was salary. Because any good company doesn't want to put people in a bad salary range, especially a highly cleared person. This affects not just your retention, but the mission.
Sure.
Sure.
So I had a chance to really I could coach a bit, but I really wasn't and coaching is not the right word. I wasn't addressing the things that I saw, and I saw really just lack of preparation, lack of agency, lack of knowing, and absolute zero salary negotiation skills. So this made me pull back, and I started speaking on the topic. I created a few workshops for Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, which served two of our bases. They then took my little, I guess I call it a capstone salary negotiation class, and they stuck it in their TAPS program. They still use it. This inspired me to do more and more and more. So my father, so we'll talk about my dad. It was 2022 when he started getting ill, and we knew that the end was near. And he was started putting together his legacy, like how much money each child would get. And Shark Tank style, we all had to go to him and say, this is what we plan to do with the small amount of money, because he didn't
Wow.
want us to do stupid stuff, right? My father
Wow.
Right.
my father was just frugal, saved every penny. He would scoot across the floor in his home rather than call for help because that would be more money, because he really wanted to save it for us, which is
Wow.
amazing. But he was just stubborn, stubborn old Texan. Anyway, I told him about my book idea, which is now published, and that I kind of had these thoughts around a podcast, and he liked it. And he said, "You're not going to buy a boat." I said, "No, sir, I'm not going to buy a boat." And he shared a little bit about his Army, experience, which he never talked about. He's of that generation of, the World War II, Korea, and sometimes Vietnam that really they're very quiet about their service. So he shared some stories with me that really made me realize that this was a path I wanted to go on. And it also, I think it really brought home something that was important to him. And we learned later that he gave to a lot of veteran organizations without our knowledge, and more, actually more combined, than he gave to his kids, which is interesting. So this mission is really fueled by the memory of my dad, but also he said one thing to me, Cheryl. He said, "Cheryl," he said, "Look, I don't want you to charge them for this. They're constantly taken advantage of. So whatever you do, make sure it's equal schmequal." And I said, "Yes, sir, I will." So, there was the idea, I'll be a career coach, I'll help people, write resumes, I'll monetize everything I can do. And I thought, you know what? That's not my power. My power is connecting. My power is my knowledge. I've sat in a seat where few people speak because they're company ambassadors. Companies don't want them out talking about things. They're there to fill jobs, right? So I
Mhm.
have this unique thing, and I think so far, I mean, I as of this recording, I've interviewed 80 some odd people. I have 20 shows that have been produced and have launched, and I want to get to 100. And then I'm going to do something else. I don't know. I might continue it, but the podcast has given me the chance to fulfill that purpose and talk to people who are either transitioning or have transitioned, the challenges they're having and the wins. And then to Nancy, you were talking about being a mill spouse and having to, navigate that life. I think when you're transitioning and you're moving from even duty station to duty station, you're all reaching out to say, "Hey, I know you lived at Fort so and so,
Right.
Camp so and so. What's it like?" And Vic, you probably did this for the UAE. What's it like over there? What am I going to have to take that I won't have to buy back at the end of my service because I'm lugging around the 700-pound thing that's worthless? Or, this happens in the military, but it doesn't happen in the civilian workforce. It's, what do you got? Give me a job. I'll take anything. And to me, a second career after the incredible things that you've learned in the military, it's worth the time and energy to figure out your purpose, your likes, your interests, your skills, and have the confidence to walk into conversations where you're getting something valuable, both for you, your family, and the company.
Wow, that's amazing, and there's a lot there. I'm not even sure where to begin, but I do have one question right off the bat. First of all, your father sounds like an incredible character, and how lucky you were to have somebody so interesting set you up, for your next career move. Um,
Thanks.
but one of the things really jumped out at me when you were talking, and that was people, military veterans, not really being fully prepared for that civilian world. So, how soon is too soon for somebody who's in the military to begin preparing for that next step? Because no matter what, everybody at some point is going to have to take off that uniform and
Mhm.
move on to something else.
Well, you bring the issue of me writing a book, which is the Civilian Mission, the 3-year guide for military professionals planning civilian careers. I was having a conversation with the gentleman who wrote the introduction or the foreword for my book. I was talking about the book idea, asking him if he'd participate or if I could quote him. And he said, Cheryl, I think a year is great. Everyone talks about a year, but I'd like to get a hold of him 3 years in advance. I wish I took more time. Now he spent 20 years in the Navy and he's a incredible success now. His name is Chase Hughes. But having him say that it planted the seed is like, okay, let me look at this problem differently. If I had 3 years, what would I teach them? What would I tell them to do? What would I get them to start thinking about? And this truly that's when the seed grew into a tree and that is what I have out right now. And I'd say that, general thinking is a year. You're given what, 180 days for a skill bridge program. You're supposed to start transitioning 12 months prior to your separation or retirement date. But think of Nancy, all the folks you know, and Vic, you know these folks too. Think of the ones who've been med boarded. Think of the ones
Mm.
who've had family circumstances that or, they get suddenly picked up, "Nope, sorry, you're not leaving. You're needed over here," and there's another PCS in their future. And let's dangle the carrot of a higher rank and, all these things could happen. A plan is just a plan, but wouldn't you rather be prepared than surprised. So I would
Yes.
rather someone put a prepared plan on hold than have to mangle everything together. Because that's, sitting in my seat as a corporate recruiter, I saw, and this is what happened. And I can't say this enough. I would have the most brilliant interview with someone, and it's usually about an hour, right? You're getting to know them, you don't know them. At the beginning, I would warn them, hey, we're going to get through some housekeeping, your clearance, this, that. The company I worked with was wonderful, very risk adverse, a lot of policy. We got through all that. They got comfortable with me. Then we started talking about what they loved, what they did, why they applied. And I'd always tell them at the very end, we're going to talk about salary. Now, I understand you've never negotiated a salary in your life unless you've been a civilian before the military. But we're going to spend as much time on this as we need to. And you'd think but 95% of the people, Nancy said to me, when I said, "What are your salary expectations?" They said, "I don't know." And I thought, well, see, I'm making them far too comfortable, right? This is my fault. I went through this huge existential crisis like, okay, maybe I shouldn't tell them. Maybe I should try but because it's not the corporate recruiter's job to help you get that right salary at every company. A lot of them are trying to save money. A lot of them are like, hey, I got this person for 5% or whatever less, so we can give
Sure.
five more to someone else. It's not about the human being sitting in front of them and what will keep them at that company. Fortunately, as an HR consultant, I get to work on these things now. But at the time, I was just like, wow, this is challenging to me. This is what drove me to create that workshop. So for all the people that still say, I don't know, I just want to give you a big virtual hug because you don't. You don't. And there's no reason you should. What does TAPS teach you?
Yeah, I was
I
gonna say, like, they don't say anything about, like, of course, they're gonna tell you about networking. They're gonna tell you about, updating your resume. They're gonna tell you about going to job fairs and how that's gonna work, interview processes and those sorts of things, but never do they talk about salary expectations or negotiating for a salary. And I wonder why that is. If maybe they feel like if they were to commit to that, that they would somehow be beholden to those numbers, and so that's why they don't, or whatever it is. But that's a critical piece, like you said. I mean, just for the longevity of that next phase in their life.
Well,
I
Um,
and
go
I would
ahead.
also imagine, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I would also imagine that this information can only be helpful for military veterans in their next careers if they're going to be in any kind of managerial or hiring position. If you don't know how to negotiate your own salary, then what's going to happen to you when you're on the other side and somebody's negotiating with you, or even just the very basic part, if you're involved in the interview process and you don't understand how that works, that doesn't really make you a great asset or
Right.
overly confident in that arena.
Oh, you're 100% right. And, I want to bring up two things. One is percentage, but the other is I hear this a lot, especially from our enlisted folks. I went and talked to Joe. Joe and I served, and he's a manager now. And I got $20,000 less than I thought, but he knows what I made. He knows my rank. He knew how much HOLA and COLA. Like, I think the expectation is that if you're walking into a veteran comfortable situation, that they will know or remember what their pay grades are. Guess what, folks? They don't. Women remember everything, men forget everything, just FYI. The only thing women forget is pain, which is why we have children. Men, traditionally, you forget everything, which makes you so much fun. But also, when it don't expect them to recall pay grades and things like that. It is up to us as individuals. And then let me get to the percentage. So let's say you get into a job and you're comfortable with the salary, you're just taking whatever they're giving because that's what the market standard is, right? Not what you need, not what you and your family sat around the kitchen table and figured out what you wanted. But that percentage will hold you down. So, and by I mean that percentage, you're going to be given a percentage based on that salary for the rest of your career. So let's say you want $100,000 and you take a job for 80. Well, you're being paid $20,000 less than you could be if you were to take another job and then get 2%, 3% raises on top of that. Because it's not, unless you're in a sales role or you're an entrepreneur or you're in a VC capital role, I don't know, or you're robbing banks. I mean, you're not going to get huge raises. It's 2, 3%. It's usually cost of living, which is higher now, but
Yeah.
it's not a lot. So if you look at the transgression of people, or the progression rather, of salaries, you look at somebody over the 10-year, I can tell they started low because they're under market now, even after 5 years. And you don't want to do that. What happens here, and again, I worked with a highly cleared CIP, FSP group of people. Everything here in the Indo Pacific is TSSCI. So they're walking in with these big, I call them big, sexy clearances. And by the way, no, nobody pays you for that clearance. But the fact that you are eligible makes you hireable quickly upon your
Yeah, because
availability.
you don't have to pay the money to get them cleared,
Yeah. Well,
which is
we don't
very
so
expensive to get
but it's
someone
not a
background checked.
company it's not a company expense, and I think people need
Mm.
to know that that's really the consumer expense. It's the taxpayer. It goes
Uh,
back to the citizens. So companies are not paying for that, but it does take time. Right?
mhm.
Just in SF86 to get, if your secret goes dark, understand your clearances. And I tell this to people all the time. Before you separate, you have every right to walk into that security office and say, give me a printout. I need to know when my next adjudication, my investigation, if I'm on continuing education, whatever it is, evaluation, um, find out what your deadlines are and communicate that to the company. Because what you don't want to happen is you get this company that says, we love you, then they run a background on your clearance and go, it's expiring in three
Yeah.
months.
Mhm.
Or, we have to pick you up before then, and the contract might not get hit for another 5. And, it's timing. Everything in the world is about timing when you get out. So the other thing I want to say, and this is mission critical, is that when companies, and this is why I'm such a strong advocate for this group of people, is I'll stand in front of companies and say, you are bidding on contracts for the DoD and you've told them you're going to staff all these positions, but you've undercut the salary so you'll win, you're putting the entire mission at risk. So unless you come to the table with dollars from daddy, getting that big bucket of extra money that your company's been getting, and saving, you're not going to win this war at all. You're getting a contract to get a contract, and shame on you. That's not what we do to people. But those folks that just take those jobs, they tend to be, I call them heartbeats and seats. They're hiring them for their clearance, not necessarily for they're taking a job just because it's a job. It's not the highest quality candidate. But what it does for people who have those big high clearances is it puts you at risk. When you're underpaid, and I live in Hawaii. We're the third highest cost of living in the United States. We're in the
Yeah.
top 10 for the world, and we're a city. This is just one of the places in Hawaii.
Yeah.
But, when you have that high cost of living and you're going to, we joke, it's Zippy's is very popular here.
Yes,
And
Zippy's is great.
yeah, so, you want to go to Roy's, which is a great fine dining restaurant, but you're going to Zippy's because you just aren't making enough money. This makes you vulnerable. And there's a lot of bad actors out there
Yeah.
who offer money for information. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but and Marines, they'd never do that. But I want you to know that, there are people that think about this and hopefully if they can get to the root of, being underpaid. This also happens, of course, overseas as well. You know.
Well, I mean, Cheryl, I mean, your point to that though about being vulnerable is very germane. And also to link to what you're saying about we would never do that. Like, sure, no one would probably ever voluntarily or um do anything subversive where they're getting money directly for any information they would provide. I think we that's safe to say. But I want to use the EFV, which was the expeditionary fighting vehicle. Was going to do all this high speed, high water speed stuff, and there were all these mechanics and engineering assets to it. Well, without even realizing it, they compromised the mission via social media because they were posting pictures of themselves,
Oops.
posting pictures of their experiment, all doing all of these sorts of things, and the Chinese were able to just use things that were public domain to then reverse engineer. And of course, you can question what capability they have, but whatever they end up reverse engineering, they now have 1,000 of them. Um, and so I think it's very germane then to say that like being able to invest in people, not just like you said, a contract to get a contract, but to literally invest in your workforce will have those dividends later on because you're not going to go through the same level of scrutiny as you continue to have to fight for funding,
Yeah.
justify your funding. Um, you have all of the the setbacks that come with not having put into the people the quality of people that you wanted. Now you have all these setbacks. Now you're under additional scrutiny from
Yep.
PNR and Congress and all of these things. Like, where is this money going? Why are you behind deadline? Why are you missing deadlines? So I think it's very profound what you're talking about as far as being able to justify that fight for salary. It's not just like, and I think there is a stigma about, well, I sort of had to, eat this shit sandwich while I was in uniform because, I was doing it for the good of the nation, but now I'm going to come out and I want to get paid. And I,
Yeah.
I think that a lot of those civilian workforces may be afraid that that's the mentality of veterans coming out of the service. But to your point and things that you've seen firsthand is that service members are not in that realm because for one they're too ignorant of the process of how it even happened. So even if they said I want to get paid, you can still get over on them. But more than anything, veterans just want to have that same feeling of being useful and of being fulfilled by their work and having a purpose more than they want to actually have like money in the bank, right? I don't know. Is that a
Absolutely. I'm gonna tell you a fun story. We can bag on another branch of service. I won't say which one, but it wasn't a Marine. So I was friendly with somebody. They were trying to get a job. I was doing some unofficial coaching. Their deadline to get out of the service, 30 years, squeeze every drop of blood out of the military that they could. Um, I met this person at the end of their service, probably 6 months before they transitioned out, and they had gone to their service academy 30-year class reunion, and we were going to have dinner, and they wanted to give me some hats and things like that. So I was happy to take the present and the free dinner and listen to the stories of lore and all that. Pretty impressive. And this person was a very impressive person. Their career in the military was worthy of at least a 1 star, and I don't know why he didn't make it, but the ego might have been an issue. And I say that because
say it
um,
ain't so?
this the conversation that we had at dinner. So we were kind of talking about his experience and what the beautiful time he had reconnecting with all these people. Well, a person he knew had left the military after going to the academy and gone on to great heights in the aviation world and is now a CEO of a major airline. So they downed a bottle of bourbon and talked about old times and being 20 years old again. And I guess this guy disclosed his salary to him. And so this is, this is a warning shot for all of you who might talk to somebody who's been out for a while. They've got a head start on you guys and gals. So he looked at me with the straightest face, and he is a bit of a chucklehead. He was a bit of a joker. So I always thought, is the other shoe gonna drop? So he looked at me and he says, I figured out how much I'm gonna ask for my first job. I said, oh. And I'm thinking like he's finally listening to me, like 120, 130, you're in '06. Like he says, $500,000. I think that's fair. So exactly. So I'm in mid chew, so I couldn't spit my food out or laugh or I'd choke, right? I'd be rude. And I finished the mouthful and I thought, just be kind. He doesn't know. He doesn't know what he doesn't know. But leading with ego like that, I said to him, I've got 30 years of work experience. Would you make me an '06? No.
Oh, wow.
Why not? I've got 30 years of work experience. Would you make me you gotta put the shoe on the other foot here, boss. You're not going to make an executive aerospace CEO salary probably for a few years.
Right.
And and if you're doing it, I wanna know if it's legal and if I need to turn you in because I mean, are you gonna keep your clothes on? What are you doing? Robbing banks? It is and I finally I could and he was serious and I thought, well, I'm trying to like get him to laugh about this, but he had honed in on that amount. And he's since gone on to do great things and I doubt very seriously he's making $500,000. And if he is, God bless him. I have conversely somebody I've introduced you to, Vic. I interviewed somebody for my podcast. His name is William Allen, and he has a podcast called America Builds. So he came out 10 years, military Marine officer, and wanted to work in Congress, right? So he was schlepping coffee and working for, as a grunt. And then,
Staffer or whatever.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's like, who do you know? Who do you know? Who are you working for? And then he realized that wasn't his purpose. So he went to work for a management consulting firm, one of the big fours. And that was also grunt ish because he realized he was behind the curve. He then took an existential ride cross country in his car, which is when I met him originally. I was trying to recruit him. And he reminded me of this before our podcast. But Will went on to be in the VC world, and he has leveraged everything into this. And the venture capitalist looked at this Marine and went, you've done what? You went where? Awesome. In DC on the Hill, they're like, who do you work for? Who do you know?
Hmm.
What are you
Right.
doing? Is that coffee still warm? Chop, chop, boy.
Right.
And he was one of hundreds, by the way.
Sure.
So you can't, and I'm pretty sure Will's doing it. He's making it because with that amount of energy and that amount of drive, he had to. But let's look at Will, and you can find him on one of my podcast episodes. I think he's on the third one, but he is truly breaking the mold. Everything he was told to do, he had to say, no, that's not right. That's not right for me. Taps class was bullshit for him. He had a horrible transition. He said to me, Cheryl, I had no agency. I had 0 idea what I wanted. I had to go form that. So again, this is why we're here. This is why I've written a book. This is why I have a podcast. Everybody's story is unique. Everybody's mission is different. We can't fix this. It's not a big problem. It's individual situations that may or may not affect you. It's how you choose to leave the military, what direction you focus on, and your happiness within that. I've paid people that are being paid less than I think market value, but they're happy because I've hit their number. It's it's up to the individual.
Well, and what advice would you give to a veteran who's getting ready to make that transition to equate their military experience to something that is going to make sense to somebody in the civilian recruiting world?
So there are classes, people, VSOs, online courses. There's now AI. I think this is really the big focus, Nancy, on helping people translate those skills. I think if you look at anybody that's in the service side of this conversation, they're going to say, talk to the USO, go talk to your military family support center, go online. There are companies now that have MOS translators. You know, take those steps. But again, if you're getting ahead of this 3 years, you're having a chance to really talk about, and let's talk about this. It's really, as Will Allen brought to me, agency. You're in the military, and if you're active duty, God bless you and thank you so much for all you're doing, for your support, for your service. I feel so safe, especially with our Marines. But what you're doing is you're talking on behalf of we. So it's going from we to I. And that's hard.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
really hard.
Hmm.
So it's almost selfish, and for all of those humble, hardworking military folks, it's almost like, you want to continue talking about the mission, you want to continue talking about the team. Well, let me tell you something, a story I'll share, and then I'll answer your question. A woman said this to me. I think either she felt it or she read it. If I was skating across Lake Michigan during the thaw, and my family from my military time was on one side of the lake and my coworkers were on the other, and I fell through the ice, I know who would take me out. The people that would pull me out, and it would not be my coworkers. So, you know, you want to stay enculturated. You want to stay within that warm, soupy environment. And I hope you find it. I know it's out there. There's a lot of companies trying to do that. But I think, to answer your question, the short answer is finding out what you want to do is going to be a journey. It might not be, you know, one person's going to know exactly what they want to do, another person's going to kind of fuddle their way through it. A Marine Corps officer, actually, Art Benke, who was on one of my first shows, said to me, Cheryl, stop saying that they're failing. They're learning. 70% of you will leave your job within the first year. That's a stat that has not changed. And as a workforce development nerd, that always bugged the hell out of me. Like, oh, I gotta fix this. Well, guess what? You don't need to stay in a job that doesn't serve you. There's just not enough time in the day for you to take care of everything. If you can get ahead of it 3 years ahead, and that does not mean you hit the apply button, that does not mean you meet all the recruiters. It means you start scoping what it is you liked that you did, find language for it, look at that industry, find out where it lives, talk to your family. And I'm going to say this 100 times, do not do this alone. Find mentors, look at American corporate partners, Veterati, hiring our heroes, hire our heroes, also another one. These groups have mentoring circles. Find people who are ahead of you who have done it. Lovely that you can talk to your commander, but guess what? They're still in the military too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they don't know. But get permission to cert up, use your GI Bill, and meet people, meet people, meet people, meet people. Vic, we were talking before the break or before the you hit record about my councilwoman status, which is a big deal to everybody, but it's free, right? Anybody can be a council person or a board. You could probably even do it in your community if you're active duty, or maybe your military spouse can, so that someone in the family is serving. You will meet when you do volunteer work. You meet the coolest people, and
True.
those people are part of your helping network because they know you and they trust you, rather than I want to look at ABC company. So 6 months before I get out, I'm going to look at all the people that I can find. And the TAPS person told me not to talk to the recruiters yet 'cause I'm not hireable. I'm 6 months out. So I'm going to find every staff member. Never met them in my life. So what happens? It turns into this transactional. Hey, man, I'm a veteran. I'm getting out in 6 months. I want a job. Can you talk? Well, probably, maybe not. You might get ghosted.
Right.
Rather than, I worked with you on this project for our kids' school or our church or this thing we're building or this national project we're on. And hey, who do you know that I can talk to? I'm really scoping this industry. Heck yeah, I believe, Nancy and Vic, people want to help. We just need to know how to empower them to help us. And a lot of that is we don't know what we want, so we don't ask. Knowing what you want, knowing the timing is important, and doing it at the right time is essential.
Yeah.
So would that be, and so I'm thinking about when I went through Tap and Tamp, I'm thinking about like when I was actually reconning it, because as a battalion XO, I wanted to know, like you said, is a year out. I've got a lot of senior guys who, you know, understand the ins and outs of everything Marine Corps related, but have no idea what the civilian world is going to offer. I've also got a bunch of really young American humans, and they've been told what to do every second of their life. And so now, so I wanted to know, like, what is it that transition advisors and the transition seminar is doing to prepare them so that maybe something we can do along the line can help or at least reinforce what they're doing. So I'd been a couple times, um, and I find that most of what they talked about was very general.
Yeah.
Network, get a LinkedIn profile, update your resume. I think we've beat this horse to glue, but when you say like to do the volunteering, to get to know people in your community, I guess, where in all of your experience, like, where does the nuance of the individual play into that preparation thing that Tap and Tamp is just not going to be able to speak to it? And I don't mean to bag on Tap and Tamp. I think it's very good. I think it's critical. But because they're dealing with hundreds of service members rotating out on a weekly basis, they have to speak in generalities. Go to job seminars, update your resume, you make sure
Buy
you
a
have a suit
suit.
and tie. Yeah, suit
Yeah.
and
Nice.
tie.
Yeah.
And get a LinkedIn profile.
Mhm.
They're not going to be able to, so what do you offer, or what sort of nuggets of wisdom do you have for those individuals? Because any broad strokes thing is not going to account for everything that each
Yeah.
person has, right? So I don't know. I kind of
You
belabored that question a little bit.
you asked a great question. I get this asked every time I'm on a panel, a stage, or a podcast. I think that it's not the military's job to teach you to get out of the military. I think they do a lot. And the TAPS class is not perfect, but it is what it is. And you all as a community are used to dealing with less. I joke that every branch of the service has their I would say their proclivities, but having worked with all of you, I will say that the Navy and Marine Corps are probably the most creative. I could give you a bag with a piece of string, a popsicle stick, and some duct tape, and you could probably do anything with it, including kill somebody. I mean, it it really you have to look at it as this is a huge challenge ahead, but there's nothing that I have not done in the past that can't be transmorgified into this. Go through your TAPS class, be respectful of the process. It sucks. Or I've had people say it was perfect because I totally knew what I was going to do. So everything that I needed to learn from it played into my plan. So it is up to you how you use your resources. I know because I work with TAPS administrators, military family support center folks, and everyone in the veteran world that they are underutilized. So walk into those TAP classes and make friends with people who are going through the process ahead of you. Put your own damn community together. Go twice if you have the opportunity to go. Bring your spouse.
Yes,
Bring,
that's a good one. Hmm.
so, get as many ears. This is a week-long mandatory training. Treat it like every freaking mandatory training that you've had. I mean, I'm pretty sure you don't remember 100% of the last thing you were trained on. You had to go do it. So look at it as experiential. You need to go, these are skills that you will hopefully take that enormous handbook they give you and resource it. But also, again, this comes back to confidence and agency. If you have an idea and you want to go down that path, it's probably better to know even a broad industry. Let's say you've been a finance person in the healthcare side. You're this or that. Are you going to go look at manufacturing? Do you want maybe, but how married are you to that? Wouldn't it make sense that you go back into a clinical or
Hmm.
hospital or something like that and work in finance? But finance is broad, right? You could go work for a casino if you wanted to. It doesn't matter. So knowing where you're anchored, I love numbers. or I love clinical care. I love Go with that and let that be your lead. Have a couple. So my advice, Vic, you said what would be my advice? Don't be so married to something like our friend, the chucklehead. Don't be so married to that salary or that
Right.
thing that it completely throws you out of the loop for every other conversation. Have an idea of the things you're interested in. And this works well for networking too. And again, this is another thing you don't do well in the military because you don't have to, right? People walk into a room, you see their rank, you know their pay scale. You're told where to go. You have some of a choice, not a lot of choice, I hear. So, networking gives you the opportunity to share your passions. And if you look at it like I'm meeting a friend that I have something in common with, Nancy, you and I, we love people from the great state of Wisconsin.
We sure
I
do. You betcha.
I I
Don't you
love
know?
people. I love people from Wisconsin, Michigan, Chicago, all of it. And I can tell you because I've worked with so many people from those areas, tried to recruit them as a recruiter, and they make the most loyal people in the world because they've dealt with winter. They know how to plan, so I've already earned your trust just by telling you that story. And it's true. It's not like I'm manufacturing it. I'm just saying this is how we have to approach, but finding out what we want, that's the hard part because you're in go mode. When you're in your last year of transition looking for a job, the focus is getting a job and then a paycheck, and then you have to pay your bills. So the I statements never come into play. The interest of what you want to do, the passion, forget it. Oh, shoot. I just interviewed a woman named Gabrielle uh, Boucher, and she has a company called the Purpose Company, the Purpose Project, or she wrote a book called the Purpose Project. And her whole focus is helping people find their purpose. The Navy hired her to teach their leaders
Wow.
all about purpose. And so she hit my radar and she talked about this. And I can't talk about purpose enough once you figure it out. But you're, again, going from, I'll use Laura Schmiegel, a wonderful woman, also a lawyer, and talked about her military spouse experience, her helping with the military spouse program at Hiring Our Heroes, Blue Star Families, things like that. But, she told me this. She's over at Orion Talent now. And she said, Cheryl, you have to understand these folks are coming from a very structured, predictive career environment. And your job as a bridge builder is to help fill in those gaps, put light on that bridge. You see that bridge as being very short. They see it as, and I'd hear these sayings, I'm jumping off a cliff. I am going into the abyss. These scary scenarios for a Marine to say that to me, for somebody who knows how to literally save my life, to say that the job search scared them made no sense to me. Now it does. Now it does. So there we are.
Well, I wonder if part of that, and this is just me speculating, is because military service is, especially if it's a career's worth of military service, so 20 years or more, is not something, it's not a job. It's a passion, it's a calling, it's a career. It's not just something you do to earn a paycheck.
Right.
And I wonder if there's an idea in people's minds that there can never be anything that matches that in terms of, um, what's going on, what you're doing.
I hear a lot about the grieving process of leaving the military. Vic, maybe you have experienced this in a way. You are continuing the mission through MCA, and Nancy, you've been part of it. Probably your whole marriage,
And even
but
before that, as a child of the
there
military, I've seen
there
it.
you go, military brat, right?
Yeah.
So again, we're going to go back to purpose, and grieving is it's a process. You don't just like cry a tear and it's done. It comes at you in weird ways. And I think of all the people I've interviewed, especially our special forces and high tempo combat folks who are dealing with TBIs, PTS. I learned a few new terms doing this podcast: post traumatic stress, growth, and injury. So PTSD, which is what everyone says, PTSD, which is disorder, which belongs in the DSM, but PTSI, injury, and then growth, PTSG.
Yes.
So the benefit of this is you've been broken down and rebuilt. into the G, and then the injury is something that you acknowledge. So you can ask for accommodation. And I would love to give just a few minutes to accommodation. Please remind me of that. But the grieving process is very important. And again, workforce development, I see all sides. I see dislocated workers. I see homeless and houseless. I see veterans who may never re enter the workforce because they are not able to seek or are willing to seek help. So there's a whole faction. And, again, I don't think a lot of the people listening are in that camp, but I never want you to have to slide down that hill either. So reach out to your support network. Create it if you don't have one. If you're not married or partnered or have a significant other or a family member, get people. Have your accountability group and make sure that it's not just transactional, that this is a group that is there. Another Marine, Joe Palacios Jr., was on my show. He's part of the Veterans Club podcast. And he said the vet center saved his life,
Mm.
and he was a dog trainer. He said his Cocker Spaniel actually knew that he was depressed. His wife came home one day and said, "Get off the couch. You have to go do something." He went to the vet center. And through that, they had programs that he could hook up to. And through that, he met somebody he started a business with. And through that, he found a mentor who had been in Vietnam, and comparing and contrasting everyone's experiences. And for those of you who may be too young or have just heard stories, the folks from Vietnam did not get a lot of resources. There was
Right.
huge
Right.
stigma for them coming out. My uncle re-enlisted 3 times to not come home because urine bags were being thrown at him when he
Yeah.
got off. I mean, he was a screaming eagle. I mean, my uncle, who was a rock star and died very young, but he, to hear these stories and to watch how different things are now. We have small problems, as they say in Hawaii, small kind problems compared to what we were dealing with in Vietnam. But Joe, really attributes the power of the veteran community and the organizations, and there's hundreds, by the way, thousands probably.
Yeah.
Find one that fits for you and use your military family support center, folks. I cannot say this enough. If you have access to one, great, walk into their rooms and meet them and do all the classes. But if you don't, get them online and hook in, because even if you're checking in with somebody once a month, it's better than nothing.
Hmm.
And if you're willing to say, I need help with this, that's the big one, I think, Nancy, is
Yeah.
that especially Marines, you're so good at what you do. And there's so much demand for you to be the alpha, the big dog. You're the first. You're going to take that beach. And you're not some pussy, man. You're not going to ask for help. Well, guess what, friends? You need help. We all
Yeah.
need help, even you big dogs. So, and dogettes. So, hopefully, this makes an impact. But for the job search, you could think of it 10 years ahead. And as Chase Hughes, who wrote the foreword to my book, a great naval officer, said, it starts the day you put on your uniform. Everything you learn can be transferred over to the civilian. You just have to learn the language. You just got to find the right audience. You just got to, and that starts with finding what you love. Because I'll tell you something, if I meet two people, let's say, Nancy, you told me the same story that Vic did, and you're talking to me about your love of lemonade stands. And you came to me with your love of lemonade stands with enthusiasm, and Vic's kind of read it from a script. Guess who I want to help? You. I
I do
want
love
to ride.
lemonade stands.
Yeah, me too. It's because where you're from. You Midwestern love, you.
Yes, I am.
Cornball. No, seriously, it's the passion. I want to be part of passion. Every human being wants to help somebody. And if I can help you find your passion, that makes me feel good. And that does exist. Um, it's a little bit of play and it's a lot of, nuance, but you'll get it. And you might talk to 50 people and find 2 people you like, but you gotta put the effort out.
It's so good. Yeah, I mean, honestly, Cheryl, so appreciate you taking the time to share your wisdom, and to be with us as long as you have. I mean, I still have like 1,000 questions and things that I want to dive into. So maybe we'll try to get you back on later, because this is like, I mean, this is free counseling here. This is so good. Um, but I do want to recommend though for people who are listening to definitely check out the 3-year guide for military professionals planning civilian careers, which is out now. You can get it through Amazon. We'll link to that book in the show description when this is released. Also, you've got another book coming out, Unlocking Your Worth, Salary Negotiation for Veterans, which is huge.
Yep.
It's a lot of what we've been talking about now. And then once that comes out, we'll definitely be putting that out. And once again, we've got Mil to Civ, MIL to CIV, career transitions. Also, for folks, you've got CA Cross and Associates LLC. So you've got a lot of fingers in a lot of different pots, which is so great. And the fact that you're doing this with your podcast, which again, we're going to come up with a really sweet acronym for it, but it's Military to Civilian Career Transition Power Hour Podcast. Um,
Yes.
all of these resources, again, like, yes, use your transition centers, your resource centers, all of these things. But Cheryl, you're also on LinkedIn, like
Yep.
link in to Cheryl. And even if you don't make a direct connection, the resources that you have available are so huge and so great. And in about what 8 or 9 weeks, you get to hear this velvety
Oh,
smoke, sexy voice talking to you about how I didn't know what the hell I was gonna do when I got out. Other than be Ralph Macchio's stunt double. So, um, yeah, and he's not doing action movies anymore. So I was totally
mhm.
screwed. But yeah, so again, listeners, this has been a real treat for me, and hopefully you guys were taking notes. And if you didn't, go back and listen again. Get out pen and paper, and take it in. So, Cheryl, thank you so much for being with us today, and taking the time to impart with us this like unbelievably useful information. This is so great.
It's been my honor and pleasure. I tell people this all the time. I constantly, as a civilian, ask permission to sit at a very important table. So thank you for the opportunity to serve in a very different way. As civilians, I think it's important for us to be allies and advocates. And you all have so much to bring to the table. And I just want to leave with this. You are strong, brave, skilled, and trained. And these are all things that the civilian workforce needs desperately. So once you figure out how to talk about that and put it into a context of things that you love to do, you probably will have a very successful career. And if you don't hurt yourself over it. You can always quit. The one thing about the civilian workforce that you can't do in the military is quit. You can quit. It's okay to quit. So thanks so much, Vic. Nice to meet you, man. Thanks, Nancy. Appreciate the
Thank you.
time today.
Oh, it was great to have you here. I have more questions, so I'm looking forward to you coming back and talking to us again. You
Yeah,
betcha.
absolutely.
The Marine Corps requires leaders of all ranks to have a deep understanding of war and the employment of force. MCDP 1 reminds Marines that the military profession is a thinking profession. Every Marine is expected to be a student of the art and science of war. It goes on to say that every Marine has an individual responsibility to study the profession of arms. Self directed study in the art and science of war is at least equal in importance to maintaining physical condition and should receive at least equal time. The Marine Corps Association understands the critical importance of ensuring that Marines are as mentally ready for combat as they are physically ready. That is why we offer an entire page dedicated to wargaming on our website. We have recommendations for both tabletop board games as well as computer games. And for Marine Corps Association members, there is a discount code for War Game Design Studios that you can find on the website. War games are a great way to immerse yourself in history and to put yourself in the shoes of the great leaders of history. Go beyond guided instruction and experience the thrill of wargaming. Check us out at mca-marines.org/decision-making-exercises MCA/wargaming-2. That's MCA-decision-making-exercises/wargaming-2. Take your training to the next level. Scuttlebutt is a production of the Marine Corps Association. You have heard the voices or contributions from Major Vic Rubel, USMC retired, Nancy Lichman, William Truding, and our guest. Ty Frazier is the editor, sound engineer, and technical producer. The Marine Corps Association is not an agency of the U.S. government. The opinions expressed in this episode are the personal views of the participants and do not reflect the official position of the United States Marine Corps, the Department of Defense, or the Marine Corps Association.